past few years, Crystal Dynamics has been really focused on making their titles appeal to the modern audience, and they're not using their characters and storylines to their fullest potentials. Lara Croft has been pushed to the side, Joanna Dark was uglified, and now Crystal Dynamics is going through even more layoffs because this plan is not working out for them. I have a few different things to show off, but before I get into the topic, if you enjoy the content I create, check out the links in the description, join the community in my live streams, and consider supporting through Patreon or YouTube memberships. Now, I think they're going through layoffs for a plethora of reasons. I think that they've pushed established fans away. They've tried to chase a new modern audience. That hasn't worked. They haven't really created anything new or unique in several years, and it just seems that they're kind of wallowing in their own destruction. And now Crystal Dynamics has laid off even more people. So it says they've laid off an unknown number of workers following the cancellation of Perfect Dark by Microsoft. In a statement on LinkedIn, Crystal Dynamics confirmed the layoffs, but did not specify the number of people impacted. Now, we do not know exactly how many people work for Crystal Dynamics. We do not know exactly how many people were laid off right now, but we do know that back in 2022, when they were acquired by Embracer, they had about 273 employees. But back at the beginning of the year, we actually had seen them lay off 17 other employees, which doesn't really seem like a lot in the grand scheme of things, especially when games like Assassin's Creed Shadows have 2-hour-long credits. But this is pretty significant for a studio that only 3 years ago had 273 employees, and now where they're laying off even more employees after the death of this, what was supposed to be a rather large game, it's not looking particularly good for them. So, heading back to the original article, today we made the very difficult decision to part ways with a number of our talented colleagues as the result of evolving business conditions. I know a lot of companies are going through a lot of layoffs right now, so it's not just them, but at the same time, if these people were so talented, you would think they'd be able to put them on another project. We don't know how many developers there were on this title, and to top all that off, there were several studios that were supposedly assisting with Perfect Dark, so it seemed like it was going to be a rather large team overall, but I don't know how far into development they even really got, because we had heard from developers that ended up getting fired that the trailer they had previously shown was basically doctored footage. They had a very specific portion of the game that played a very specific way so that it looked like it was actually much farther ahead in development than it actually was, but that's really the only playable part of the game that existed. So did they just like hire a lot of people very quickly, and then because of internal delays, those people never really did any work? We have no details on that, but it all seems a little bit suspicious. This decision was not made lightly. It was necessary, however, to ensure the long-term health of our studio and core creative priorities in a continually shifting market. The company also confirmed that Tomb Raider, still in development, was unaffected by the decision. But from what we heard at the beginning of the year when they laid off those 17 people, a couple of those were allegedly part of the Tomb Raider team. So technically that team has already been shifted around a little bit. I personally think that this Tomb Raider game that's going to come out is not going to release for a very, very long time, probably 5-6 years, so that team is going to change a lot, I'm sure. While the statement does not explicitly mention Perfect Dark as the reason behind the layoffs, multiple former workers have posted on social media whose posts and profiles suggest that they were working on. These layoffs seem to be a delayed reaction to Xbox canceling Perfect Dark, which Crystal Dynamics was working on with the initiative. Earlier this year, the initiative was shuttered at the time of the cancellation back in July. And over the past couple of years, I've had to talk a lot about the state of Crystal Dynamics, and it's really not a positive one. I hate to be all doom and gloom, but I don't see a way that this studio is going to change anytime soon. And I think that their next game is probably also going to be bad unless they truly put players first, which most AAA studios are not doing at this point. Of course, taking a look at Perfect Dark and the state of Tomb Raider, Microsoft and Xbox were roasted back in 2024 for making the perfect darks Joanna Dark look like a man. I didn't think that she looked the worst, but I also didn't think that she looked the best. I think with a tweak of her jawline, and if it was made a little bit smaller and the tips of her hair were a little bit spikier, I think that most people wouldn't have been so upset with this. I think that they could have changed it in development, but also they made this design. It was most likely intentional to avert thy male gaze, as all of these activists love to call it, even though it's really just the human gaze, because women like to look at pretty women and men like to look at pretty women and women like to look at pretty men, and men can appreciate like the strength of other men. Everybody wants to look at the perfect version of a human and the perfect version of humanity, and they're not always sexually attracted to these characters or enjoying these characters because you can objectify them, which is just a stupid concept in general, but they don't really understand that human beings like to look at other pretty human beings, and that shouldn't be a problem, shouldn't be offensive, and we shouldn't be uglifying characters because of that. Perfect Dark's level designer had claimed that gamers were a mistake as part of a long history of unhinged attack on fans, which is crazy that you have a developer, and in this case, a level designer, who claims that the very people he needs to swipe their credit cards on his product were a mistake. He said gamers were a mistake. He's a individual who hates anybody who has political opinions that are different than his. And yeah, I mean, he probably pushed a lot of potential customers away. Now, all of these things together, I think, led Xbox to the decision to cancel it. I don't think that this is the only reason, but unfortunately for these people, this project will never see the light of day now. And, well, they're going to be begging for jobs in other places. I don't think that's going to go over well for them, especially with this type of history. The Tomb Raider 1 through 3 remaster featured trigger warnings that accused the game of offensive depictions of people and cultures. This also faced major backlash. And then, of course, you have the RPG. Now, this was canceled back in June. Evil Hat announced that the Tomb Raider RPG was canceled, citing creative differences. And it sounded at this point like maybe Crystal Dynamics was going to start to change. They realized a Tomb Raider game about respecting other cultures and having Lara Croft basically not Tomb Raid with this DEI squad wasn't going to sell, so they decided, no, we no longer want to work with you. We no longer want this to come out. This also faced a major amount of backlash, but the TTRPG space is definitely the most infected at this point, and I don't see a way to save it. So, I mean, I guess they also have realized it now, which we thought might have been a step in the right direction, but one cancellation doesn't really mean much given they wanted to work with them in the first place. And then, of course, you get into the Lara Croft redesigns over the past few years that are abysmal, right? They constantly want to defeminize her. They constantly want to make her look uglier and uglier, right? They give her a flatter chest, weaker body proportions. They make her more of a snobby, snooty girl boss. And she's always had a bit of spunk. I'm definitely, not saying that, oh my gosh, they're completely changing her character when they do that. But at the same time, they pushed it to the max, which a lot of people didn't like. And then you have them redesigning her to make her uglier, and it just doesn't sit well with people. So over the past couple of years, they have been focused on making their titles appeal to the modern audience, and it has not worked out for them. Maybe they will finally realize they need to start listening to their true fans again. Maybe it's early enough in Tomb Raider's development that they can make a really busty, beautiful, funny, sexy, intelligent Lara Croft, or we might get more of the same, like the past trilogy, where she was, hinted at being a lesbian, and she was flattened out, and she was a girl boss, and really nobody liked her as much as the previous iterations of her. And that's also taking into consideration that in the future, we're supposed to be getting that Phoebe Waller-Bridge live action Tomb Raider, which nobody is excited for, and that would definitely go in a modern audience direction if that actually comes out. So I'll be keeping my eye on all of this over the next couple of days. I'll check some of the developers' social medias to see if anybody else have actually made any other statements. But at this point in time, Crystal Dynamics is laying off more people following the Perfect Dark cancellation, and it seems like they are in a disastrous state at this point. But that's all that I really had to discuss in this video. Let everyone know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this and found it important and informative, make sure to give it a like, and if you didn't, give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I'll talk to you all again in the next video really soon.